Good evening. At this time, the regular board meeting of the Havasupai Board of Education is called to order. It is 7:02 p.m. on Monday, March 11th. I'd like to remind everyone to sign in if you're a guest and to silence, for all of us to silence our cell phones. I'd also like to remind visitors, in order to facilitate an effective meeting, we ask those who wish to make comments to the board, please read the visitor guidelines found outside the door and complete the attached public participation form and get those to Jennifer. At this point, could I have a roll call attendance, please?
Giles.
Here.
Raver.
Here.
Hendricks.
Here.
Casson.
Here.
Larson. Here. Park. Here. McComb.
Here, and at this time, Ella Walk is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ella? Would stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ella. Board members, you've had an opportunity to review the agenda since it's been sent out. At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved. Larson.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda as it's been presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Consent agenda. Board members, you've had an opportunity to review the consent agenda for tonight's meeting. It includes minutes of previous meetings, bills to be paid, the treasurer's report, personnel issues, and some record management issues. You've had an opportunity to ask questions and examine that information. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we'll give that to Lance and then the second to Jenny, I guess. Discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Park. Yes. Casson.
Yes.
Raver.
Yes.
Giles.
Yes.
Hendricks.
Yes.
Larson. Yes. McComb.
Yes. We've also had some donations this month. Dr. Hall.
We have two donations this month. The first one is from the Target Take Charge of Education program, a donation to Lincoln Trail of $50 in cash. And the second donation is from Ron and Margaret White to the high school ag department, a cash donation of $1,100. So thank you to both of those
Very generous
parties.
Yes. So those are the donations for tonight. Is there a motion to approve those donations?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Much further discussion on donations? Need a roll call vote, please.
Hendricks.
Yes.
Park. Yes. Casson.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Giles.
Yes.
Raver.
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. Now it's communication time. Is there anyone here from the PTO? MSEA? Or anything from the foundation?
Just a reminder that Friday, April 12th at 6 p.m. will be the annual Bulldog Bash at the City Center. We have awesome live packages this year and silent auction items, and we have the wonderful Hey Jimmy Band again. So get your tickets and order them online.
Okay, very, very good. Anything else on the foundation? That's pretty good.
Nope, we'll start March 1st, our scholarship application period open for our high school students. We give over $50,000 worth of scholarships away, and that period's from March 1st to April 1st. So if you have a high school senior, check out those websites for those and pay attention to those.
Very good. Anything else from visitors? We've got one visitor tonight, and Katrina Roberts.
Hi, I just want to touch on the football coach. My kid's a senior. This isn't about the football coach at all. I don't know him. And my kid's not going to play, so that's really not the issue. I want to talk about the process. Okay. I'm not talking about him, there's a lot going on about his losing record and all that stuff. I don't really know him, and I don't really know that. I only know what's been in social media. But the process of picking somebody to even be interviewed, we have coaches that didn't even get interviews. Coach Nick Roberts, who has had success, and the big deal of the new coach was the story about how he gave up playing in college so he could coach for his alma mater, yada, 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 which is awesome. But we have a coach that did exactly the same thing. His name's Nick Roberts. He left 2 years out so that he could be a little bit older from the kids that he was coaching. He didn't think it was right to coach the kids that he had played with. He coached again until he went to Kentucky for college, and he came back and he coached again. He coached a total of 13 years here in Mahomet for free. He got passed over twice for paid positions for people who had never coached football before. So yes, he's my son and I'm speaking up on him, but there's also another coach that didn't even get an interview who has been invested in these kids. I think that's not a fair chance. I'm not saying that we weren't due for a change. We were definitely due for a change, but, and whether you like him or not, and I had my issues with him, Coach Poe is a Hall of Fame coach, and he deserved better than he got. He slithered away after awards, and that was the last we saw of him. He deserved to be honored in some way. We did that to Bonnie Moxley too. I just think that how we treat people matters, and it makes us as a community look bad. And I mean, I get all these things about you want to hear information on family or community engagement and all of this stuff. You know, he's going to be confirmed tonight. So what I'm saying really doesn't mean anything. And I know that. I've been down this road before. But it's how we treat people matters. My son has had success, incredible success here. And he's never even gotten a paid position. He put his entire heart into it. And he called the athletic director and said, I don't work at the district. When are you going to start taking applications? Or he didn't call, he emailed. I have the email. He never even got a response back. If nothing else, he deserved an email back and say, look, we've already gone a different path or whatever. And I don't know, just my opinion, and I'm done. But I think if you trace the coach back, he's connected in a way that he shouldn't be connected. So that's it.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate those comments. This time it's time for remarks from the board. And first of all, as we kick that off, we are happy to have Dennis Young from Intner with us here tonight. And we're going to yield some time during board reports to Dennis.
Thank you. Well, this is kind of a special time. You moved into this building, and this building is a very special building. You know, it's interesting as I go around the state, a lot of districts don't deal with, in a proactive way, changes in pedagogy, school safety and security. They give it lip service, they deal with it piecemeal. You dealt with it for this building holistically and created a school that is quite different than the average school. I call it a 21st century school. I'm fortunate to be asked by NSBA to speak in Philadelphia on school safety. And this is one of the buildings I'm going to include in our hour-and-a-half seminar. So it's been recognized for what you all have accomplished. So with that in mind, I guess representing the design team and the construction team, we put together a commemorative booklet that I'd like to share with you. And I have copies here and a few extra copies. And before I handed that out, I know we have a little video, and this is a digital. It shows some of the earlier ideas that came about that then merged into what it is today. Go. So what you see in there is what you see every day and maybe don't think about it anymore. We have what we call the cubby halls, which is those hardened areas between two classrooms where it served two purposes, both for severe weather, because it's a hardened facility, and also for intruders. It's a place that kids can go into and feel safe. It also gets the book bags and cabinetry and all the storage out of the classroom, so that those classrooms can be used for much more than just storage of cubbies and coats. Then of course the gym, which I understand is getting a lot of use, as we all knew it would. You know, that's a FEMA rated shelter. It has built into an emergency generator. It has built into it restroom facilities within that facility that's rated for an EF5 tornado. So we have a secured playground. One of the first ones, I don't know anywhere in the state that has a secured playground, which allows kids to play and not go outside and maybe be at risk. Just so many wonderful things, and you can access that playground from your classroom and back into the classroom again. So I can go on and on and on. You know they're building because you were the ones that came up with the dream and helped implement that dream. So I thought that little video might be worth looking at. So with that, I'm going to hand out these books, and it may take you a minute to take the cell phone off.
Thank you.
I didn't exactly count, but maybe they take one.
You can teach us.
Oh, you got it. Good. Okay. All right. Did you get one?
I did.
I don't know if you want to take that cover off or not. It's like the book you get on holidays. You know, you can't get the wrapping off. But what you're going to see in it, and the only reason we're asking you to take it off, you're going to see pictures of a lot of the people that were involved in this. And by the way, Dr. Hall was great in helping me edit this and make sure we had the right photos and the right narratives through the whole thing. Lori's turning the pages, and you can see some of the pictures. Thank you, Dana.
Story time. You did the heavy lifting, Dennis.
Yeah. Well, you helped a lot. And, you know, phase one had a certain vision. The vision was that phase two would be extended and go off that end of the building. And after giving it more thought, we said, let's not do that. Let's turn it and close it so you have a complete loop. In doing that, we renovate the library of phase one and created an administrative space out of it. We took the library, or the gym, and created a library into it. So it all really worked out pretty nicely. And some of the things got the bell and everything else. What's interesting, I'm always having to explain to people what the secured playground is all about. They say, well, how do you get in there? How do you get two huge overhead garage doors that you can drive an EMS vehicle in case you need that to go
Maintenance
inside.
vehicles.
Yeah, maintenance.
Maintenance vehicles.
Yes, yes. But it was great. I mean, I think everybody's vision for this and how to tie it into the kinds of learning that needs to happen in the building was really key. That's what made it a real school. So I wanted to share that book with you, and I hope you enjoy the building. I know you have a full board meeting tonight, so I'm not going to take any more of your time. But after the whole process that we've gone through, all the decisions that have been made, and the input that you've received from staff and community, I just think it's worth documenting that in a book that you can refer back to. So thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you.
Dennis, we appreciate it. We've enjoyed a great relationship with Ittner through both phases of this building, and we sure appreciate that. You know, like you said, originally everyone's vision was we're just going to daisy chain south. And I remember when you guys came in and said, "Are you open to a different plan?" And we're like, "Okay." And he said, "Well, we might have to renovate part of the building we just did." But then it turns out to be more functional and less cost than it would have been to Days Chain South, even with the renovation we had to do, and turned it into a great functional building. So
Right, yeah.
thank
I'm
you.
glad you're proud of it.
You and your group for coming up with that and stretching us there a little bit and taking us outside of our comfort zone on that.
Yeah.
But it was the right, in the end, it was the right call. I sure appreciate you guys and your design team and everybody who helped make it happen. So
Well, the kids benefited, so.
let Todd and everybody back at Ittner know.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
We will. Thank you
We're ready
all.
for some green grass like this now.
Yeah, you have to rewrap that. now.
Green grass, thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Okay. All right, comments from board members. First of all, in the consent agenda tonight, we did hire John Atkins as a teacher and our new varsity football coach. That was included in the consent agenda. And just wanted to share a little bit on that. You know, that's always an important position, and we like to do our best to find quality candidates. That's a top priority for the district. And varsity football coach is certainly highly visible and active in the community. Advocate for our kids and oversees a program that lots of students are involved in and the community and parents have an interest in. It's probably one of our more high visibility positions. And we had some folks around the district who helped with that. There were really two committees. There was a committee involved at the junior high that, under Nathan's leadership, that kind of looked at the teaching part of it and did some vetting and some interviewing there. And then there was a team at the high school working with the athletic department who worked on the coaching part of it. And we had a couple coaches involved in that, all administrators were involved in that. And there were a couple parent reps, some pretty respected folks in the community who were involved in that too. And we appreciate everybody's time and the effort that was taken to do that. You know, that's a position I think did not expect their, regardless I think of who the candidate would have been, we all want the best and we represent different and diverse opinions on that. But I appreciate the group that did the work and put that together and came back with a recommendation. And I don't know if the rest of the board's had a chance to look at building reports, but that's kind of my take on building reports tonight, and we'll just kind of go down the line like usual. Lori.
I attended the high school Winter Sports Awards. I thought that was very nice, so thank you for that. And was excited, I was teasing Mr. Fisher earlier, but that the junior high wrestling team did so well this weekend. That was exciting. They sent 7 boys to state, and they had, I think, 5 out of the 7 placed, and kind of followed that along, so that was really fun to see that. There's a lot going on. Since I'm first, I'll let Kendall.
There is a lot going
Oh my
on,
gosh.
a lot of activities, and congrats to the math team. I mean, golly geez, what a fantastic team that was. It's amazing. Yeah,
A lot of kids.
and the kids, the number of kids that were ranked there, I mean, it's impressive on how well they did. And you have to give it to them. I mean, they should take all the credit for the hard work that they do. And spring break is coming up, so hopefully everybody will be able to relax a little bit.
I think math was great, but I'm particularly pleased to see engineering on here as well. And you know, math
You want to duke it out for a
manifests in a lot of ways. You can't do engineering without the math, so it builds on each other. It's just good to see this happen.
I'll go a little bit younger, and the Impact Program, and Megan and I actually just spoke about this the other day. You know, it's great to see that from a standpoint of what the kiddos at Lincoln Trail are getting, but to see the high school kids come down, work with those students. You know, the Lincoln Trail students are getting character building out of that, but the high school students are too by giving back. And to kind of piggyback on what Max was talking about, you know, as far as the search went for the new football coach, again, thank you to Nathan and his team, and Shannon and Matt and their team, and especially the current volunteers, because you're right, we had some very well-respected, very thoughtful folks in the community that aren't on payroll and donated their time and put in a lot of effort to do the best we could. So want to make sure they are recognized and know we appreciate it.
Well, I was going to say a couple things that have already been said, but obviously, spring break's coming. I want to wish everybody a safe travels if they're traveling for spring break. But also, this is our last board meeting before the elections. This open board meeting. I think we have a study session on the 1st, but I'd like to encourage everybody to take the time, do your civic duty, and vote. This year, it's not even during spring break, so you don't have that as an excuse anymore. But there are plenty of places you can go to vote early, I think it's important that make sure you vote. There's a lot of other issues that we can voice our opinions on too.
I just want to say thank you to Keith Pogue. He has given a lot of time and sacrifice and commitment to these high school boys that he's been coaching, what is it now, 11 years as a head coach, yeah. Just really appreciate that. Not only that, but his involvement in the community too, in developing a youth football program that he kind of got started about 5 years ago. And so I think he definitely does deserve a big thank you from all of us.
Thank you, everybody. At this point, it is time for financial update with Trent Duxel.
Plug in here real quick on the batteries. I got a two-part financial update today. So, help me out. Two-part financial update. I want to talk a little bit about operating cash flow. I guess we usually talk about days of cash on hand at the end of the year. When we close out the fiscal year, and here's what our days of cash on hand that we landed at with our operating funds. But we've never talked about it throughout the middle of the year, and we're at the point now where we're entering a period where it's at its lowest from February till April, and that is because we received that the property taxes in May and June. But I just want to kind of give some numbers here, and my main point is to kind of illustrate how challenging cash flow can be for a school district at times here, again, mostly between February and April. So if we look at the percentage of the budget collected for the revenue column, that's as of the end of February. So for the ed fund, we've received 58% of our revenue that we budgeted for the year. Operations and maintenance, 49%. Transportation, 54%. Working cash, 65%. So on average of all four of those, of course, been 57% versus the percent of the budget we've spent. We're about 67% of the way through the year, and we talked about this about the halfway point where we're on budget at this point overall. Education fund, we're right at 67%, like I just said. Operations and maintenance, we're a little bit more than that. We've had some HVAC repairs, but I see that kind of dwindling down to being right on budget at the end of the year. Transportation fund is a little bit front-loaded with the lease payment in July. And then working cash, that's really there's only two expenses in working cash. The transfer we do in July, and then the transfer out interest into the ed fund at the end of the year. But the point here is that we've spent about 74% of our budget, again, amongst all those, all four of those funds. We've only received 57% of our revenue. Excuse me. And property tax revenue is about 53% of our overall revenue for all 9 of our funds. And half of that isn't even received until May and June, the last 2 months of our fiscal year. So that there presents the challenge of getting past that valley of cash flow in early to late spring, February to April. So a struggling school district, if they're entering that point of low cash flow, they may need to issue tax anticipation warrants, which are essentially borrowing against taxes to be received later down the road in May and June to make payroll or to pay bills. But it's a good illustration of why it's good to keep a healthy cash reserve. And I'm proud to say that our finance committee, overall our fiscal prudence, we've created a sufficient yet appropriately sized cushion to make it through that cash flow valley and to make it to May and June. So I've never given that kind of update, but I just wanted to throw some of those numbers at you to kind of illustrate that kind of challenge. It happens for all school districts, but it's kind of dependent upon what kind of reserve they build up to prepare for it. Last topic, Governor Pritzker gave his first budget address on February 20th. His proposal was to add $375 million to the evidence-based funding formula for next fiscal year. Just to give some perspective, this current fiscal year, the proposal was to add $350 million into the formula for FY19, although on the back end, $50 million of that was carved out for Chicago Public Schools. So only $300 million was injected into that formula for the tier funding. Yeah, didn't expect that. Tier 2, we landed in Tier 2 by the skin of our teeth this year, by about 900 of a percentage into Tier 2. We could have been Tier 1. But Tier 2 funding, we got about $225,000. Time will tell once we see how the formula plays out, where we fall, 1, in tiers, but 2, what amount of money we'll get for that tier funding. Of course, this current year, with the tier funding, $225,000, we added a kindergarten teacher and a 4th grade teacher to reduce class size, and also added an instructional coach. So we're making good use of those funds, hoping for the most we can get next year, next fiscal year. I expect we'll probably learn over the next month or two, hopefully. Probably not the next month or two, probably more like May or June. Same time as property taxes coming in, so we'll look out for that. We'll give you some updates as we hear more, but yeah, just a couple of updates there. Any questions on any of that?
Trent, back to your first point, I know the state recommends about 90 days of cash on hand. And if I remember right, we started this fiscal year with about 97.
97,
so
that's why you're in the finance committee.
Yeah.
So end of last fiscal year, 97. That's the first time we've been over 90, like in the last probably 3 or 4 years. So we're at that point now that the state recommends. That's still, I'd say fiscally prudent, but not overtaxing the community, so to speak. So we're at a good spot, and it's just important that we continue with that.
Also, Trent, roughly, what's the difference between the high and the low cash during the year?
Thinking about September through November when we received the first collection of tax receipts. And I would say probably about mid-October we're above 100 temporarily, and then of course we.
How much in dollar value might that represent between our high and the low?
65,000 times.
It's a swing of
about 80 days. 80 days times 65,000.
$500,000. $5 million. $500,000 peanut.
That's a lot of money. It's a big swing. That's the point. It's a roller coaster in the cash flows, and until you really break down the numbers, it's hard to really quantify that. But it's very real.
Yeah. Trent, not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to anyway. A couple months ago, you gave an update, and at the midway point, we were at 50% through the fiscal year. We were at basically 50%.
We're less than, I think, 1% under.
Right. Do you have a ballpark of where we're at?
Ballpark, or is it 0.83% exactly?
Oh.
Yeah, 0.83.
So we're right on the line.
Yes.
Okay. That's why he's a business officer.
You got it.
Trent, what's your thoughts at this point on categorical payments and those things?
The last one.
I know last year we got one right at the end of the year.
We got an extra, which exactly, yeah, they owed us that anyway. So,
right.
When we say we were, had the surplus last year, well, a good portion of that was money that was owed to us anyway. We budgeted for 3 this year, and we received 2. So we took the conservative approach, only expected 3. They kind of caught up that last year. That doesn't happen every year. So we want to be conservative with our assumptions built from the budget.
When would we expect the next payments?
Usually comes in March or April. If we look at it historically, that's about the average. And then we may get one in June.
There's an outside shot. We could get 4 quarterly payments.
Possible.
Maybe.
I wouldn't bet on it, but yeah.
We're not gonna bet it.
Remember what state we're in, right?
One of which was to catch up. One of them which was to catch up.
One of last year's was to
Right.
catch up, yeah.
Right. I feel confident we'll get 3. What we budgeted, we wouldn't have budgeted for that. We didn't think we'd get 3. 4, we'll see.
Learned a long time ago not to bet on the state of Illinois.
Right.
Well, and with the way they changed the funding model, the categoricals aren't near as big as they used to be, correct?
Yeah,
So then they roll some of that.
Each quarter's about 130,000. Nothing to
So
shake a
it's
stick
not
at. It's not 500 like it was before.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Trent. Next up, Dr. Hall with the superintendent's report.
Thank you. First out of the gate, I just want to remind everybody of this date. Mark your calendars. Friday afternoon, May 10th. We will be having the dedication ceremony at the weight room to name the weight room after Coach Jim Risley. So details will be forthcoming, but that'll be after school on that Friday afternoon in the field house. Congratulations to Brisa McGrath, who was named to the IHSA All-State Academic Team, and Nick Morrow, who was honorable mention. Really a fantastic honor for our students. Brisa was only one of 26 students chosen statewide after the first team, so great job with there. And they're being honored at a banquet in April with the IHSA. We will begin IAR testing after spring vacation in grades 3 through 8. This is the assessment formerly called PARC. It's now Illinois Assessment of Readiness. So we'll see how that goes.
Not Illinois Association of
No. No. And the SAT is given to all 11th graders on April 9th statewide. And Lori mentioned Bulldog Bash. I want to also just commend and congratulate Peyton Cox. He was our 95-pound state IESA wrestling champion this weekend, and we had a host of other placers, and the team finished 6th overall. It's really quite an accomplishment to win a state championship. And also, amazing job to the junior high drama club and their production of Twinderella. It was fantastic. It was great. Saw that on Saturday afternoon with my granddaughter, who was really bummed when the play ended. She wanted to keep going, so it was a lot of fun. Great job. That's all I got.
Questions for Dr. Hall? Hearing none, we'll go into new business. And first is approval of the new assistant principal at Lincoln Trail.
Okay. It's my pleasure to introduce Darren O'Connell this evening. Darren comes to us after serving as Dean of Students and Assistant Principal at Edison Middle School in Champaign for the past 3 years. Before that, he was a self-contained special education teacher at Barkstall Elementary, also in the Champaign schools. He has his bachelor's degree in special ed from Eastern Illinois University and his master's in educational administration from the University of Illinois. And he and his wife Hillary live here in Mahomet with their 3 children and have a newest addition born in February, and then also a 2-year-old and then another daughter. So.
Be lucky 2-year-old's not here right now.
So my pleasure to introduce Darren O'Connell. Very excited to add him to our team.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello to you too.
We give you 5 seconds to say anything.
Yeah, well, thanks for the
You
opportunity.
don't need to.
I'm super excited to work with Maggie and the rest of the staff at Lincoln Trail. I hear nothing but great things about Mahomet, so I'm excited to just keep moving Mahomet forward, hopefully. So, okay.
Thank you.
Bedtime.
Okay, so the recommendation is to approve Darren O'Connell as assistant principal at Lincoln Trail. That comes as a recommendation from the superintendent. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Thank you, Lori. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lance. Discussion.
I think it's just great that we, as great of a school district we are, that we attract good talent and that we take advantage of that. So, I'm excited for Lincoln Trail, and I'm sure there'll be great things happening.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a roll call vote, please, Jennifer.
Castle,
Yes.
Giles,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Reaver,
Yes.
Park. Yes. Hendricks.
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. All right. Next, field hall renovation update. That is Trent and Damien's here to help.
Going to the field hall now?
Field hall.
Field hall.
Really hard because we need to catch it.
It's a new thing. I'm hoping it catches on.
All right, thanks to Damien for joining us tonight too. We're gonna run through the message itself. All right.
Field hall. We have
run through the update for the field house now that we've received the bids last Tuesday. So, pull up the old presentation here. Here we go. Alright, so, as we talked about the project, we kind of break it down to two different categories. First category, with the floor and the curtains, that's projects that aren't required to be bid by the school district. The pricing for those two items of the project are through the NJPA, National Joint Powers Alliance, now called Sourcewell, but it's essentially nationally bid pricing for government, education, nonprofit organizations. So we have access to those nationally bid price options, and of course, Mondo floors, the flooring and Porter curtains are within those nationally bid items in that menu. So we get to take advantage of the pricing for those. Fieldhouse floor, like I just said, the manufacturer is Mondo. Kiefer is the certified installer in the area, and I'll let Damien talk a little bit about the floor and I guess how they came to that total price.
Yeah, so starting with the floor, as we discussed last time that I was here, looking at it with the NJPA pricing, able to get the product that we really want in the field house, not needing to have three kind of equals that really aren't the same product. What we did was initially kind of set out the general scope, working with Kiefer Flooring, who's a certified installer. We then went, talked with the administration of the high school, coaches, and tried to identify kind of some wants and needs and different desires for that floor. With that, we found some wants that really just weren't fiscally possible. Some pretty major changes to the way the layout was. But then ultimately came back with this kind of final price, which includes the applicable lines, which will be basketball, volleyball, tennis, badminton, pickleball will be on each of the courts. The coloring of those will be done in a way where it won't look like a cornucopia of color, that's spilt on the floor. We are looking at a wood look through the main field, as we discussed the last time I was here, just to give it a little different feel, a little more updated look. And then also the track itself, that was kind of a big piece where we modified some of the lining to make it a little bit more, stand out a little bit better for the runners. Also adding some functionality with some additional sprint lanes on the east side of the gym, kind of partial length, but will allow for practices to run a little bit more efficiently and effectively there. We're talking about this floor surface. This is what we recommend as a sport floor. It's a 10 millimeter rubber floor, so it'll work really well in that space. With Fieldhouse curtains, it's a very kind of similar type of process we went through there. In this case, working with Porter and Holdeman and Homey, looking at the existing structure that's there, the existing systems that are there, we wanted to reuse as much as we could. Really as a cost aspect, but really just the efficiency of materials. Steel right now is very volatile, if you will. So the less that we had to add steel in there, the kind of more solid dollars we could get to. So same thing, talked with the administrators, talked with the coaches, and really just kind of keyed that into function. One of the keys to this is the controls system that we put into place will be much more user-friendly. It'll have a touch screen interface that'll allow for multiple hoops or screens or nets to drop down simultaneously, which currently it's a one key at a time, up or down, which could take up to 30, 40 minutes to set up a gym for a practice. So that's one of the keys this system will allow. So,
to circle back to the floor, Danny mentioned some of those fiscally impossible options for the floor. One example was the logos on every one of the courts. That's about $19,500 to add our big, gorgeous bulldog to the middle of the court on each of those three. We decided to scrap that. We'll have logos on either end of on the walls, and we'll get more into that with the bid category. But that's an example. Another example would be the long jump pit. That was about a $15,000 cover for that long jump pit. There are other affordable options that we're going to look into. That one would have just had the flooring, the Mondo flooring on top of it. Apparently made of gold. So, yeah. Get into the, okay. So the second category of project that we're talking about are those alternates that we were able to bid out Remove that little screen. It's fine. Okay, so yeah, the alternates that we were able to bid out. You know, when we first met in the field house back in the summer, we went ahead and walked through the full space. You know, what else would we want to get pricing on? So we kind of came up with our list and we went ahead and bid those projects out as a menu style format. So kind of an a la carte menu, if you will. That way we can kind of pick and choose which of these we'd like to proceed with. Bid package 1, as it says, is the paint and logos. Would be painting the entire space. That's not that. Paint.
I like it. I think it's great. Blow it up.
Yeah. Sorry. Paint and logos in the field house. It would brighten up the space a lot. Really complement the new floor and the curtains. Within bid package 1, other items related to the ceiling and walls. Alternate 1 would have been was LED lighting upgrade. We figured we'd go and get pricing on that. Couldn't hurt. That's where everything is moved to. Alternate 2, Tectum panels. I'm not to ask you to jump in here, but I'm going to go ahead and attempt it. The Tectum panels.
See how much she's been listening.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We have insulation on the walls between the I-beams.
Yes.
And in some areas that leaves a little bit to be desired. So the Tectum panels would cover those kind of unsightly areas, make it more durable. And yeah, again, it would complement the space with the fresh paint and everything.
One of the keys, the reason we went with Tectum as opposed to like just, abuse-resistant drywall is for the acoustical value, because those bats actually do help keep it from just being an echo chamber. But it would give you just a much cleaner install. A lot of times you'll see these as acoustical panels, even in brand new gym spaces. But yeah, so it's something that we thought could really clean up the space. As those that have visited the space, you know that the block goes at different heights, kind of around the space. You give it a little bit more uniform look within the space. So.
I've got alternate 3, the HVAC replacement. There's a unit in the ceiling of the field house that is supposed to bring in fresh air from outside. A fan, it's not moving right now, and it's not working. So we want to get a bid for replacement of that unit. Bid package 2, really the next 3 bid packages are field house locker rooms, the team locker rooms out by the gym, and the PE locker rooms out by the gym. So 3 sets of locker rooms. And bid package 5, lobby bathrooms. So those are all the areas that we identified as we walked through the space to see, let's get some pricing, see what that looks like. Next, we'll get into the cost summary for all the projects. It's a little bit small, you have to look behind you there, but the top portion there are those nationally bid NJPA pricing for the floor and the curtains that we already looked at in the first slide. $752,614.80 total there. All the bid package items, since we bid that as a menu style format, these are all the lowest bids from any of the 5 contractors that we received bids from. Many of those are at Atkinson Construction, but Christy Foltz did come in a little bit on package 3 and 4, 2 of the locker rooms. Of course, I tacked on BLD's architect, very reasonable architect fee to the project as well. Damien's been huge in this process. They usually, charge about a 10% fee on this type of project, and they conceded a little bit on that, which we appreciate. So we're up to about 1.3 million. Met with the Finance Committee last week, Tuesday, and we discussed kind of all the different options here. We decided we want to cap the project at $1 million. So that's what we were comfortable with. As we look at the different items within the project, we scaled it back to what we'll see on this next page. Of course, doing those top 2, we went into this project planning on doing minimally the floor and the curtains. That needs done. It's a year. If you ask Matt Hensley, it's about a year or 2 past the shelf life for that floor. It needs replaced now. Bid package 1, we like to proceed or recommend, at this point, recommending the field house paint logos at $118,346, and then the Tectum panels, which kind of complement each other, $70,368. I highlighted the HVAC replacement, $38,804 in red. That way I knew to come back and talk about that as being health, life, safety eligible. So that would be outside of the $1 million that we're deciding to cap the project at, because we can use a separate bucket of funds, health, life, safety funds, to pay for that replacement. And we have a later agenda item, in fact, that will kind of give us the green light to apply for those funds through the state. or apply to the state so we can use really money we already have. And that means we're at this point foregoing bid package 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's see here. Any questions on any of that? It's a lot of information, but it's kind of where we're at.
Matt, I guess one, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think we'd had a conversation years ago that you've had feedback from some other schools that our floor is to the point where they're not real comfortable.
Yeah, it certainly,
Tackiness of it.
it presents us some issues from an excellent practice space, but from a competition space and a practice space, at times it can be problematic. So I think what Trent says is an accurate representation of those first two items.
We've got one of the courts we're not even able to use for competition right now, even if we want to, right?
We had very, very limited competition out there this winter.
Well, even one of the volleyball standards, it won't even, don't you guys have to like tape it shut?
Well, so a few years ago, we actually had an issue with the floor and the expansion joints, which manipulated one of the sleeves that's in the floor. And so that actually has a bigger plate on it because they had to do some work on that, reset that sleeve. And so that's caused some cracking around that sleeve once it was altered. So that's on court 1.
That's actually a part of this scope, is properly repairing that, getting it kind of fused into the new system, as well as a new pole vault box. You know, that'll be kind of a new need with the new flooring surface.
That will be included in it?
Yes. Yeah.
I believe also within the Porter, I was going to say the pricing for Porter, the 181, we're also getting new covers for the I-beams.
Yes.
That's right, right?
Yes.
I think those will be orange.
Yep.
Kind of fit into the space. Those will cover all the I-beams on the walls around the house.
So Damien, with the quality of the floors and the curtains, and how long what's the life expectancy of?
I mean, that's a 25-year floor. Yeah, if it's maintained, 25, 30 years you can get out of it. The technology of this floor is a lot different than what's down there right now. That polyurethane floor that's there, I mean, if you think about buying a car, which you bought a car 3 years ago and what you can get now, 20 years of materials. Mondo actually creates the floors that they use in Olympic stadiums. It's a thicker system that they put in those places because they have almost no budget. But yeah, this is a 25, 30-year floor, which is really some of the best you can come by. You're not gonna find a 40 or 50-year floor. There's just not products for that.
The old floor, we're like 18 years into a 15-year floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we still, I mean, the contractors are named here, and I'm looking at the stuff from our last meeting. Do we still, we get to use purchasing through the co-op, or?
Like we did with this building, OFCI, owner furnished contractor installed. I don't know if that's really an opportunity to do that with this project.
Because we had it on the original one, like field house floor, field house curtains. I just was looking at.
That is.
Yeah, that's an actually bid. That's
Okay.
so that's a different
Sorry,
kind of co-op. That's a co-op that we have access to as a government or a educational institution. Yeah, different model than what we used here for first two in Middletown.
Thank you.
Are there other options for the Tectum panels, like a drape or a curtain or something that would, could be anchored and to cover up that insulation?
Really, it's just about durability over the long haul. There are, but as far as replacement and upkeep, this will be the most durable material. I mean, this will be almost like a set it and forget it type of product.
If you got baseballs hitting it and stuff, it's gonna hold up.
Yeah, it's intended for this type of. It's essentially like a fiber pressed board, so it's super dense. It's got a ton of strength to it, and it's intended for this type of install. You could just drape fabric of some sort over it, but then you've got tearing and sagging and dust, and it'll start to look.
It would be the same product that's on the ceiling of the gymnasium and the ceiling of the commons.
Yes.
So the other packages that we're not gonna do, is it in the plans to do them eventually, or are we scrapping it completely?
Yeah, I don't think we're scrapping it completely. No, I mean I'd say it's still kind of on certainly the list of facility projects we want to take on. We just don't feel it's kind of in our wheelhouse at this point to do that financially.
And the LED lighting, is there, what was that, like 30,000 for that upgrade?
35.
35, is there a cost savings over a period of years to having the LED lights versus the lights that we have now?
There would be. It's not like it's gonna be a 5-year payback or anything like that though. I mean, yes, LEDs are, that's the way to go. However, I couldn't see that you'd make the decision because of those savings. It's probably a 15, 20-year payback. By that point, those dollars are well done.
So the lighting is, we're staying with the existing lighting we have now.
Right, which we did upgrade in 2013 from T12 to T8, much more efficient. So it's not like it's really old.
If they were old like metal halides, like in the old gyms, like those big tubes, then yes, the payback would be paying for itself because those things cost to dim the lights in the neighborhood and turn them on. But for the switch that we have now, it was as much as anything with doing the type of work we were doing in there, just see what the costs were, because it'd be a great time to be able to do it at once. Just write down the dollars.
What will once we do the floor and the paint and leave with existing lights, what do you think that'll do to overall brightness in there?
Oh, it'd be much brighter. Our intent is to actually paint out between the all the structure and all the items that are mounted to the deck up at the ceiling will actually be white.
Okay.
That's going to be a major difference. The floor being light instead of that gray will be a major improvement. The walls, just everything having a fresh coat of paint, it'll be much brighter in there.
Are we eligible for any rebates by, for Ameren or anything like that?
Yes. Yep. And we'll apply for those actually upon. Well, actually, in the field house, if we don't replace the lights, we might be able to get them.
Okay.
They won't pay $30,000, but we can explore that now that we have a dollar amount with the contractor.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to see.
To identify if we want to take.
I know you said that it's not gonna be like a 5-year payback, but I'd like to see what would be the savings on the utilities, what would be the savings on the rebates that we would get, to see how much it would offset that $30,000.
So I think there's like 60 fixtures in there. It's typically like $500 a fixture. So it's
For the rebate?
$3,000. Is that right? Is that not right?
How much did you say?
$500 a fixture, 60 fixtures.
So that'd be 30,000.
Not 30. There's not that much.
Hey, yeah, let's do it.
Good job, Jamie.
Actual thing.
Let's go for the LED, yes.
No. I'll look at that. I'll look at that more, and then we can identify. I mean, these bids are open for 30 or 45 days. I can't remember what we included. If we determine that there was enough savings from that.
So yeah, Damien will have some time to look into that. We're actually going to be making a formal recommendation forwarding the contracts on the April 15th board meeting. That will also allow us to kind of finalize some financing options, considering some short-term debt certificates backed by sales tax dollars, shortest term possible to minimize interest, of course, callable. That way we can pay them off early if we'd like to. So we're still kind of finalizing that piece of the project, but having until April 15th allows for some more time for those discussions to happen, and we'll come back to you in April.
And I'll answer both those questions.
Probably worth mentioning as well that as much as we'd love to do all this stuff at once, these come, other than the red, everything else comes out of sales tax funds.
Absolutely.
And those are limited every year, and something always goes bump in the night, and we've got to do something that was not on the list previously. So we want to be very careful to be able to keep enough of a
Buffer in there.
Buffer in there for
Ready for
the.
unforeseens.
Yep.
I give a good example last year, the high school chiller, that big unit on top, didn't, not something we had planned out but needed replaced. So that was $180,000.
David, talk about timetable.
Yeah.
You pull the trigger in the middle of April. When's the start date?
So the intention, I'm not going to give you every date because I don't have it memorized yet, but May 20th is essentially the day we can talk about being able to hand it over. The first contractor that would be in would be Porter, who would be doing all the demolition of the existing curtains, getting the control system out like that. That's like a 2-week window. We then hand over the space for a 6-week duration for our general contractor, who would be Atkinson in this case. They were awarded a contract. That gives them 6 weeks, painting it out, doing all their work, above, getting the Tectum panels in, all the work above the floor. Then there's a 4-week period where Porter Athletic comes back in does the reinstallation of all their materials, gets all the curtains up, all that type of thing, gets controls working. At that point, there's a 3 to 5 week window where the floor people come in and finish it off through the end of the summer. Right now, we're targeting to get done right at the end of the summer, right before school. Depending on how all that stuff happens between now and then and final contracts and all that. We have discussed if we needed to drift a couple of weeks into the year, PE can be outside, things like that. But our intent right now, what we've told them in the bids, is that we're gonna be done August 9th.
We want that. And did you say you put the new floor on top of the old floor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So then how long will the field house not be accessible for use?
May 20th until at least August 9th.
And are we pushing that information out to the community? Because I mean, this is a community used field house.
It's not open to the public during that time of the evening. It's not, it's
What
typically
about-
open time change.
Okay, so all the camps and everything we typically do during the summer with the summer leagues and all that, what are we doing with all that?
We're meeting actually Thursday evening with the coaches to continue laying that plan out, which will include utilizing our other district spaces. Probably our summer leagues that we typically host, we just won't host this year, or may host a scaled down version using only the gymnasium. We're making the weight room accessible through the outside doors, so people won't have to come through the field house. And then we're also gonna we're working to make the aerobics room or the community room accessible from the outside, because we will have a few coaches that'll need to cut into their locker rooms, kind of around the backside. But other than that, with access to the weight room, those 2 locker rooms in the back, and the access to the gymnasium. So that's what we're working on right now.
And in reality, that like 3 to 5 weeks of floor install, that's really the only time nobody can be in the space or even walking through. Other than that, cutting in like to locker rooms or weight room areas, things like that, wouldn't be an issue. We just have to coordinate it. Just make sure that people aren't walking under scaffolding and things like that.
What about the plan to get all the junk out of the field house? I'm sorry, all the extra supplies that we have nowhere to store?
Yeah, so that plan is underway now. Excuse me, working with a local contractor to turn the care center into some storage.
Okay, so we are moving forward.
Right. The outdated workout space, move that into storage, and then adding an overhead door into the racquetball courts.
Okay.
So that's happening, I think, during spring break.
Spring break.
Okay,
Jackson Quality to work on that.
I'll make sure that was still on.
It is, yeah. So leading into this project, the
So when we get done, we actually have storage that we need,
Yes.
and we have a nice clean look in the field house.
Exactly. So more in April. Thank you. Any other questions?
Dr. Hall, I know, I do have a quick question if it would be
It's
possible.
really not an interactive meeting, Chris. Thank you, though.
Okay. Any other questions for David and Trent? Hearing none, thank you. Next is Trent and Damian are back for approval of the high school roof repair labor contract.
All right, so, excuse me, 2 years ago, we had a roof study done by Garland Roofing. And what that study did was provide us with, I guess, all the priority areas in terms of roof repair, roof replacement over the next, I don't know.
It's a 5-year plan.
Okay, 5-year plan. Last year was kind of year 1, and it was identified the Lincoln Trail, parts of Lincoln Trail roof was the highest priority in terms of repair. So we did that. That went off without a hitch last summer. Now we're going to year 2, and that study has identified that parts of the high school roof needs replaced or repaired rather. Of course, there's a big difference in cost of repair.
Yes.
Okay. So we're looking at the same sort of model with this Garland Roofing study where we bid out the labor, and then to Lori's point, we did the OFCI materials option where we buy our own materials, save on the markup from the contractors that they would otherwise mark up the materials, and we buy that outright direct from the manufacturer. All health, life, safety dollars. So we'll see in the next few agenda items, I think 2 agenda items from now, we'll be applying for use of our health, life, safety dollars for that project. But I'll let Damien go into a little more detail on what that roof repair looks like?
Yeah, so just back up for 1 second. The roof study wasn't necessarily to find roof work, it was more to prioritize. So we knew that there was roof work needed at each of the buildings in different ways, and it was really just to prioritize it. And then allow Trent to be able to budget what health life safety dollars go towards it each year moving through. So every facility was done. As Trent mentioned, Lincoln Trail had kind of the highest need. There were some active leaking areas. It was an old ballasted roof, so that had to happen first. The second kind of phase was actually at the high school, as Trent mentioned. The areas that you can see there, the two that are in like red, that are filled out, like filled in, and then the ones that are outlined in the red border, those are the 5 areas that we looked at and took bids on. So 3 of those areas, the 3 on the right side of the drawing there, were our base bid roof areas. So those were work that we just kind of understood we knew was going to fit within our budget and really needed to happen. They essentially were found as being kind of fair condition and needed to be updated. The 2 on the left were getting to that point, and we could save some dollars maybe by doing them at the same time, so we did them as an alternate bid. The 2 that are filled in red, those are actually an old rubber roof. The rest of the areas are metal, as you're all familiar with out there. So for the rubber portions, initially we talked about completely tearing it off down to deck, starting over. Part of that roof report that we did though was to do some infrared scanning to find where insulation was wet. In reality, if the insulation's not wet, that means there's not water getting into the roof. If the insulation's not wet, there's no reason to take it away. So what we decided to do there was to do a recover, which is just like we did at Lincoln Trail, where we essentially take everything off down to the insulation and then put our new system down. It'll be 2 plies, it'll have a base coat of essentially like an asphalt gigantic shingle in a way. And then it's got a cold applied top coat to that. It's a little different than back in the day when you do built-up roof where it was a big hot tar pit, it'd smell for blocks. This is cold applied, so you don't have those types of things, but it's got just as much durability and comes with a 30-year manufacturer's warranty. So it's really kind of the best roof you can put on for a flat roof, but for a very cost-effective way. The metal roofs are actually the most expensive to put on when you put them on new. Metal's expensive, there's a lot of labor. So rather than tearing off, especially the area with classrooms where there's just a lot of areas that are worn, a lot of seals that are broken, on those roofs with the exposed screws going in, you essentially have, let's say 50 holes on every single panel. To take that all off and put it on is really expensive, so what we've done is actually they'll take out any screws that are missing, put in larger screws, seal each of those. At each of the panels, they're not long enough to go all the way from top to bottom, so at each of those panels, they'll actually put a mesh across that, coat it into it, so it creates one kind of monolithic surface, and then the entire surface will be coated with a roofing membrane. This is like a 15-year roof on top of your already 25-year roof, so you're getting 40 years out of it now. This can be reapplied multiple times if necessary, but it's a much more cost-effective way to do that kind of updating to those roofs. And again, that'd be the areas that are outlined with the red.
You mentioned the rubber roofs come with a 30-year warranty, is that right?
The built-up that's going over the rubber.
Right.
Yes. Yep.
So 30 years, roofs getting bad again. Can you do the same thing again, or I guess the question is, do you get to a point where you just say, we just got to start?
Yeah, at some point you've got to start over. It's kind of like on your house, you can essentially go over it.
Mm-hmm.
You got 2 layers of shingles on your house before you really should tear it off. It's similar in that way. The really biggest key to it is at the edge of the roof. At these buildings and most kind of schools and commercial buildings, you've got a parapet of some sort. So as you keep putting layers of roof on, eventually the roof's higher than the edge. And that's when you either decide you got to build up the whole perimeter of the building or you take the roof off. So that's where you kind of weigh those options. When we're talking about adding these 2 courses, we don't have an issue right now. But that's usually what causes the tear off.
I'm sorry, section 11 is a steel roof or that's a flat roof?
That's a metal roof. That's a pitched roof. It's very lightly pitched, yeah.
Okay. And how old is that roof?
That was part of the addition in 98, 99.
So a steel roof has only a 25-year life on it?
Well, and Yeah, this is more of a maintenance replacement of that in a way. I mean, those panels expanding, contracting over time, it's pretty typical for this to occur where the screws now, they've got a bigger hole around them so they're getting water in. These panels actually weren't too rusted. A lot of times that'll happen because they haven't been recoated, so just sun exposure. But yeah, usually you only get about 25 before you at least have to maintain that roof. In reality, it's gonna last for 50 or 60 years because it's steel. But this is essentially that intermediate step to get it to that. You know, at the end of this will be 40-year-old roof close to. So.
Yeah, so for this agenda item, we bid out the labor. That's the labor portion. Received about 4 bids.
Yes, 4
And
bids.
that bid opening also last Tuesday. The low bid was Lakeside Roofing out of Collinsville, I believe. Just over $96,000 for the labor. Again, it's health, life, safety dollars, so later agenda item will recommend us applying for those funds with the state. Any questions with the labor portion of the project?
What, does this take care of all the spots in high school that are current priorities?
Was year 3 look like to you?
I don't remember what year 3 looks like. Year 3 kind of is a little more sporadic, kind of in some small areas around. But these were the highest kind of
priority areas.
Yeah, highest priority needs at the high school this year.
Did we do all the Lincoln Trail last time or just high priority areas?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Did we do all the areas of Lincoln Trail last time or just the high priority?
We were able to pick off a couple of the kind of medium priority routes there. I think in the next year it's planned to go back and hit a few more roof areas. But the highest priority at Lincoln Trail, which is that, I think it's the 4th grade.
4th grade hallway, sure.
That was the big deal one. That was large.
And we'll see along with the next agenda item, the materials. Overall, we did end up under the budget that we set. So we'll get to that item next, but first, recommend the labor bid.
I guess one last question, the group out of Collinsville.
Yeah.
Have you worked with them before?
I haven't personally, however, all 4 of the bidders had to be certified to install these products, and that's not just anybody. There's only a few, so we're confident that they've got experience both with the built-up but also the coating system.
All right, so we're applying for health, life, safety money to do this. All right, superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the high school roof repair labor contract as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Thank you, Lori. Is there a second?
Second.
Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, quick roll call vote, please.
Rayburn,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Park,
Yes.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Castle,
Yes.
Giles.
Yes.
McCombs.
Yes, and then the next item would be approval of the materials for the roof project. Trent?
Yeah, so like Max said, this is the materials for the roof projects. We'd be saving on contractor markup for the materials. That's the main goal there. So at least 10 to 20% on what our markup usually would be, but not an issue in this case. We're buying direct. So it went really well last summer, I would say.
So the recommendation from the superintendent is the Board of Education approve the materials contract as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Thank you, Merle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lance. Further discussion or questions?
I just have one question about the owner supplied model. I mean, it sounded like when we did that last year, we were kind of pioneering that, maybe. It didn't seem like it was something that, a lot of districts have done. Have you started to see more of that?
Yeah,
It seems like it works, it's kind of a no-brainer.
I've seen it more and more, especially on these types of products. It's hard with some of the kind of nuts and bolts type of things, where some contractors prefer a brand. If somebody likes Pittsburgh paint versus Sherwin-Williams. Some of those things sometimes can be difficult, but yeah, I've seen this a lot more. Heck, I've seen it with turf baseball fields, where you can essentially get an all-in cost for what that is. And
Are the contractors squawking yet? Because I mean, we are taking money out of there.
Not really. They're still getting to do the labor a lot of times. Even for like that example of like turf and those types of installs, there's still concrete work. There's still site work. There's still these other scopes of work they're still getting bid to. And in a lot of ways, like the roofer, they don't have to worry about getting to the site. They don't need to worry about ordering it. They don't need to worry about getting me shop drawings to approve them to order it. So there's some logistics they don't have to worry about either. They know exactly what they're going to get. So I haven't got any pushback.
Okay.
And it's seemed to work very well. So, you know, the field house floor and those curtains, that would have been a whole ordeal of getting all that designed even. But having somebody come in and just essentially design it on the fly with us helps a lot.
I think just the same as the field house, Garland has the U.S. Communities National bid for the Garland roofing materials. So taking advantage of another purchasing co-op that we have access to as an educational institution.
And that's updated every 3 years, I believe. So they have to kind of rebid. So it's not just set it and they have it for the next 15 years. They have to rebid it and stay competitive with it.
So I guess, Damien, you said that you're not getting pushback from the contractors, but you're not seeing that you're not getting, competitive bids being taken away because of what we do.
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
No, not at all. I haven't seen, we still have 4 bidders on this. Any other jobs that we've been doing with this type of model, I've seen just the same turnout for general bidders as in a kind of more formal or typical, I guess, format.
Cool. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right, roll call vote, please.
Giles.
Yes.
Raymer.
Yes.
Hendricks.
Yes.
Cassim.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Park.
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. And then item number 5 is the actual approval of the Health Life Safety Amendment to do this work.
Right. So Damien has prepared the health life safety amendments that, if approved by the board, will allow us to request the use of the health life safety dollars for again the high school roof project and the HVAC in the field house that we discussed earlier. Those are already prepared. This just allows, I believe, Lindsay to then forward them on to the regional superintendent, who would then forward them on to the state. That's the process.
We feel pretty good about our chances to get this approved.
Yeah, these are pretty textbook type of health life safety requests. So.
I just had no authorities. Okay. Any questions on the health life safety part of it? I guess I already started that.
We always do the questions.
The questions first. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the health life safety agreements or amendments for the high school roof repair and the field house HVAC as presented, and authorize the superintendent to move forward to the regional superintendent through IWAS. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion on the health life safety piece? Roll call vote, please.
Larson.
Yes.
Hendricks.
Yes.
Giles.
Yes.
Park.
Yes.
Raymer.
Yes.
Cassim.
Yes.
McComb.
Yes, and Trent, you're still up. Next is approval of the contract with Clifton Larson Allen for auditing services.
Clifton Larson Allen contract. They're proposing a fee of 1% increase from the previous year. They're at 22.7 last fiscal year, and they're proposing 22.950. Pretty reasonable. In addition to the contract, they're also providing proposals to prepare the consolidated year-end financial report. The CIFER has not previously been part of the contract. It is required as part of the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act, GATA. We hear GATA in the office and we all cringe because it's impossible to, a lot of paperwork. So, but a part of that is this CIFER report that's due at the end of the year. And it's required within the law that your auditor vet and review and all that anyway. So they are now providing proposals to their clients of preparing it and then, of course, then reviewing it themselves too. So I believe that would be money well spent to have them do that. They're already creating the financial report anyway, and this would just be an added piece to that. So.
And is that included in that price you disclosed?
It would be an additional $2,000.
But it's never been done in the past?
No.
As far as the additional, so who was doing it
GATA's been around for 2 years, but this report isn't first required until this coming year.
then? Okay.
So it's a new thing.
Okay, so it's a new thing.
in the interest of grant accountability and transparency.
So
Federal,
Plus
yeah,
2,000.
it's a federal law.
So we either pay them to do it or we break federal law.
They got the software.
Or we do it ourselves.
Or yours. Yeah.
How much would it cost to do it ourselves, like man hours?
It would take probably 2 or 3 days to do it. It's an option too.
Do we have the manpower, and maybe not the manpower, but the expertise to do that? Because if it's that complicated, yeah, I assume we don't want to do it wrong.
I know, yeah, I'm not interested in doing it wrong.
Really, Trent?
Just kind of going out on a limb.
Yeah, no. Again, they're providing the proposal. We can attempt to do it ourselves a year and determine next year if we want to take advantage of the proposal.
Would it maybe make more sense to let them do the first one and then we have a template to see if we
That
want
wouldn't be a bad idea either. I'm good either way. I mean,
attempt it ourselves?
I can say that
Outsource it.
amongst my peers, in our regional meetings and things, again, the GATA, the word frightens us anyway, but just given the amount of work around it, the application, everything else, this is kind of an added piece to that. And there's even a lot of kind of confusion on what's even required within that. And the state, ISB has not been a resource that has had all the answers because all the answers aren't out there yet. So there's just a lot of unknowns. And so again, they're providing that proposal because the auditors have to review it anyway. So they see that as, okay, maybe we can offer this to our clients and we'll include it.
Is it a situation where if the report was called into question or needed further explanation,
they would answer to it eventually, ultimately anyway, along with us, of course.
which is, since it's kind of a new thing, that's probably a little bit.
So if the auditor had to review it anyway, they'd be charging us to review whatever work is done internally?
So new, that hadn't come up yet. I mean, that would be at the end of this coming fiscal year, and I would assume that, again, there hasn't been a lot of guidance on this, other than the reports due at the end of the year. Prior to the audit even being formally sent to ISBE, they're requiring it on different timelines than the annual financial report, which is to say the annual financial report wouldn't even be available to us until after this is already due, which has been some pushback from school districts, but
My guess is they're not going to review it for free.
I would agree with you.
And if they've done it, it's much easier for them to review.
And Trent, when's the last time you had a discussion with CLA that they essentially sort of gave us a drop, right, or in the price and their fees, and they were a little more accommodating?
We did a 2-year contract where they kept the fee level 2 years in a row. And we just haven't circled back to that. I always wanted to leave it open in case we didn't want to discuss changing, but I mean, I will say the relationship's great with Clifton Larson Allen. They put us through it that week. I mean, it's a busy week that week in the summer. Not an easy week by any means. They take it all the way. So.
Is it worthwhile to have at least another discussion with CLA and perhaps?
For a multi-year deal?
Yeah, multi-year where they
I'm
reduce
happy
it
to approach her, yeah.
and lock it up?
Yeah, the first visit's usually not until the last week in April anyway, the preliminary visit, so there's some time there if you want me to circle back with the April board meeting and see if they want to consider doing multi-year, 2-year.
We see what they have to
Yeah,
say.
there's time. I'm happy to do that.
But as far as the other report goes, I think that us trying to take on a new animal like that, it's already complicated. My opinion is we let, till we at least have
$2,000 for GATA sounds like.
for some guidance.
And maybe by doing the multi-year, they can absorb that 2,000
Yes.
into that.
I'm not outside of asking for breaks, any of that stuff. I do that with
Yeah.
cable company now. I'm cheap, but I'll admit it, so.
That's what we want to find.
So am I hearing what we want to do is send that back and see if we can negotiate?
A multi-year.
Yeah.
Sure.
And maybe work that report in somehow too.
Of course. Yeah, good.
Sounds like we would. Yeah.
Okay, so I think if we're going to ask Trent to do that, since it is on the agenda, we have to do something with it. So I'd entertain a motion to table that till the April meeting.
So moved.
That would be Jenny and a second by Jeremy. Further discussion on that? All in favor of tabling that until April and getting more information, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Again.
Trent, you're still with us. Approval of bus lease.
All right, bus lease. So we started leasing back, the majority of our fleet back in July 2016. So we're coming off of a 3-year lease that expires end of June of this year. Unfortunately, bus prices have gone up exponentially since then. They came in with a proposal to lease 2019s. It was outlandish, so I asked for some pricing on releasing 19 of the current 22 bus fleet for 2 more years. Those are the 2017 77 passenger buses. Let's get this up here so it kind of makes more sense. And I'll go back through these once I read through this, because there's a lot. The other three buses were older buses, 2 2013 buses. There's 2 of our wheelchair buses, and then also a 2016 activity bus. So 22 buses total. I requested 2-year lease pricing for those newer models of those 3 as well. And I separate those 3 because those are not being released, those are being replaced. So what I have here are the 3-year lease numbers for 17, 18, 19. With our current fleet on this left side, annual payment was about $264,000. And then we have the 2-year price proposal for FY 20 and 21. I asked for 2-year price proposal because it continues to align with the manufacturer's warranty, the 5-year warranty for the buses that we're releasing. But then it also allows us to maximize the depreciation allowance for the bus fleet that we're leasing within the state transportation reimbursement claim. That's the reason for going a 2-year lease. With this, okay, I guess also since 2016, interest rates have increased, so that also added to some additional cost in this 2-year proposal. In fact, it came back and the prices per bus were more than what they were these last 3 years. I thought that was crazy. He explained, of course, the increase in the interest rate had to do with the lion's share of why those prices increased. To try to mitigate that a little bit, this current fleet, we have 5 84-passenger rear-end buses, or rear-engine buses, not rear-end buses. Scratch that. Take that after 2. We decided to replace those with 2 73-passenger buses instead. In fact, conversations with Jeremy prior to him resigning back in December, we've been talking about this a while. And then most recently with Mr. York, we decided we can do with only 3 84-passenger rear-engine buses, and again, divert those other 2 to 77-passenger. They were about $8,000, about $8,000 difference per bus annually. So we tried to, again, offset some of the cost of the increase overall with making that little change. Of course, the other 3 that I mentioned earlier too, those 2 wheelchair buses and then the activity bus, the 14-passenger bus, those prices increased because we're going from 2013s to 2017s for the wheelchair buses, and 2016 to 2018s. So we were going to see a price increase there anyway. So again, making that change to the 84-passenger rear-engine buses, is it late? So we were able to mitigate some of the costs.
Basically, 5 agenda items is your limit, right? When we get to the 6th agenda item.
Yeah. Good more now. So we will see an increase in cost there, but again, most of that has to do with the upgrading or the getting newer models in those bottom 3. But there is a little bit increase in cost that I pushed back for the last 3 months on. But I did get him to decrease interest rate a little bit. I think he was sick of hearing from me, and we did get it down a little bit. But that's kind of where we sit. So again, proposing a 2-year lease. After 2 years, or leading up to the expiration of these 2 years, we'll kind of reassess. We can still lease used buses. You can always do that. We can maybe, who knows what happens between now and then, but in the meantime, I've talked to Nick, and we will do our best to try to build that fund balance up regardless, to try to be prepared for whatever those bids look like in 2 years. I will say the last 3 years, we've seen a drastic decrease in maintenance cost. We got rid of 14 buses in this lease, 3-year lease. All of our older buses that were sucking up all the funds in terms of maintenance and repairs, the pricey repairs, those being in some cases 10 years plus old. So we're paying a lot less in repairs. We've firmed up a contract with Rush Trucking to provide a mechanic, and they've been doing all the warranty work on site, as well as the just general preventative maintenance. So I think we're in a better spot with the repairs and some of those costs that going into the fiscal year, we didn't always know what was coming. But we have a better feel on that now that we have some newer buses. So I do not regret leasing by any means. But we just happened to lease right before these rates went up. And I think that's why we're looking at some higher costs here, again, along with just replacing with newer buses, those bottom three. So.
Trent, how many miles do we typically get in a warranty on a new bus?
We're leasing 15,000 miles a year, but I know that's not the warranty. I think
So the warranty,
45.
so 45, so 3 years worth, full warranty. Okay.
Yeah, we will have, I mean, just the additional 2 years, we'll be able to capture the additional depreciation reimbursement.
So this will be a good test on maintenance for 2 years without warranty. Is that right?
No, because it depends.
Yeah, Midwest said that if we do 2 more years, we'll still have manufacturer's warranty through that.
Okay.
So I think it's more like, it's a 5 year, that's what he said, so.
All right.
Yes.
5 years or 45,000 miles or something like that. Got it.
Yeah, no, he did, yeah, he made some moves. We were good there. Now, again, in 2 years, we can also expand, you know, like this last go around in 2016, we asked for pricing for 3 year, 4 year, and 5 year. Maybe next time we get a 5 year proposal right off the bat, and we're happy with that. It should be a lower cost since we're committing for 5 years instead of 3. So we have options as we get 2 years from now on what next steps we're going to take. Eventually, we still have 9 district-owned buses, so we can trade those in eventually too. Of course, we'll be leasing to replace those. But in the meantime, those are in good shape. I mean, Nick's been here a whole month and he claims they'll still run. So. No, we're in a good spot, and Jeremy said the same before he left too. But yeah, I think we're happy with those. Again, we have Rush keeping an eye on those as well. So.
So we own 9.
We do. Some of those are, I think, considered spare, but others are just kind of our workhorses to, you know, if we don't want to put miles on the lease buses, use those.
Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the bus lease as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Thank you, Lori. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lance. Further questions for Trent on the bus lease? Good job on looking for a lot of options and trying to figure out the best path forward. Appreciate that. Roll call, please.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Park,
Yes.
Casson,
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Giles.
Yes.
Raver.
Yes.
Whitcomb.
Yes. And last but not least,
I'm good for one more.
approval of Yukon bids, Trent.
All right, so since 2013, we've been leasing a large SUV to allow for some more cost-efficient transportation. It's kind of twofold. One, transporting small groups of students, of course, as opposed to taking an oversized, full-size bus for 4 students. It makes a lot more sense financially to take the smaller vehicle, so we see some savings there. Also, teachers traveling together to workshops as opposed to reimbursing each individual teacher to travel separately in their own vehicles and pay the IRS rate of 58 cents a mile now this year. So we decided, again, about 6 years ago, to lease that large SUV. I feel like it's used about every day if we have, you know.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, so people are
Sometimes
using it.
twice a day.
They know that's the first option, you know, in terms of when they go to workshops. Nicole keeps them honest and says, is the Yukon available? And they always know to ask next. So they go as, you know, in groups, and there's no reimbursement of mileage, which was a pretty substantial expense before. Got pricing for, I guess I should say too, the current Yukon lease expires next month. Currently paying $650. Wouldn't you know it, in the last 3 years, prices on large SUVs went up substantially. Must have the same frame as the bus or something. So, got lease pricing for 2019 Yukon XL, just like we have now. This is the 2019 though, and the 2019 Chevy Suburban. The Yukon landed at $778 a month, so about $128 more a month compared to what we have now. Suburban was over $1,000 a month, and I didn't even look back. So we're looking at Warden Martin's proposal of $778.16 a month for the 2019 Yukon. No frills, just wheels and seats and the steering wheel. Cloth seat, you know, it's nothing, no GPS. It's like it's bare bones. In fact, he first proposed this same vehicle, only it had chrome wheels on it, which anymore is not even a special option. Most of them have them. I said, go back, we don't want that, so we saved about $12 a month on the base.
That's why I like you trying.
You feel sorry for my wife, don't you?
I do. I do. But I like you.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is, again, apples to apples to what we have now.
So,
Prices went up. And rates did too, of course.
and the thing that was interesting when Trent and I talked about this is, because it was a 15,000 mile a year lease, right? And we are like 44,000 and change right now with a month to go, right?
We are a little bit less than that. We're within 3,000, I mean, 42.
Maybe you said 42.
Yeah, but we're, it's being used a lot less than that.
So, I mean, we
Decent
hit
miles for the last 3 years.
We hit the mileage right on the head. You multiply 45,000 miles at 58 cents, it worked out to $700 and some dollars a month. And that's if, like I say, if you use teachers and there's 3 of them and you're paying 3 of them mileage instead of 1, it's a no-brainer.
How many does this seat?
8. Yeah, 8, including the passenger, or including the driver.
Watch.
How long are we locked into the lease for? I'm not seeing that.
Oh, it's a 3-year.
That was a 3-year lease and all we had, correct?
Yes.
So that's
We still have a minivan, right?
We do, correct.
24,000.
Which is also used quite frequently, from what I understand.
So is
$4,000.
a minivan cheaper than,
I'm sorry.
is a minivan cheaper than the, what is this, a Yukon?
We bought the van outright 2 or 3 years ago from Muhammad Car Connection, but it's used for the same purpose. It's, like I said, this is rented out about every day, so the van would be the next option, or vice versa, depending on the size of the group that's traveling to a workshop. Maybe it's only 3 people, it makes more sense to take the van. I've driven the White Activity Bus to a Skyward conference in Peoria.
So why did we decide to go with a Yukon rather than another minivan?
It fits more people for one.
If it's more people?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, and some of those small teams, the golf team, they need some cargo to put all their golf clubs in.
Can't get 6 golfers and 6 golf bags in a minivan. But I
Not
can
safely.
get, without bunging them to the top.
Or my trailer. Gloves on.
Tacky to have the golfers hanging out the window.
That's the recommendation.
Other questions for Trent?
Happy with the $12, Trent, just
Every
FYI.
little penny there.
Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the Yukon lease as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Castle,
Yes.
Giles,
Yes.
Larson, yes, Raver,
Yes.
Hart, yes, Hendricks,
Yes.
Coe.
Yes. Good job, Trent. Thank you. Item number 9, press updates on policy changes. Dr. Hall.
These policy changes were presented to the board February 11th for a first reading and bringing those back this evening for a vote.
Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve press updates and policy changes as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Lori, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We'll give that to Dr. Castle. Further discussion on the policy updates. Everybody good? All right, roll call vote, please.
Raver,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Hart, yes, Hendricks,
Yes.
Castle,
Yes.
Giles,
Yes.
Coe.
Yes, closed session is necessary tonight for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee of the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee to determine its validity. And number 2, the placement of individual students in special ed programs and other matters related to individual students. Is there a motion to go into closed session for those 2 reasons?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Jeremy and Nazar. I need a roll call vote to go into closed session.
Castle,
Yes.
Giles,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Raver,
Yes.
Hart, yes, Hendricks,
Yes.
Coe.
Yes, we don't anticipate any business at the conclusion of closed session. Thank you for being here tonight, and we'll take a 10-minute recess to clear the room. Thank you.